I want to know, I was at the last seminar, and how many people, is this their first time to sail across the Pacific? Okay, great. It's really good to know, because that will help us tailor our talks today. And I have to tell you, I am really honored to be here today with such a wonderful panel. We all have our expertise that we can bring to you about the different aspects of medical, of being prepared for the race, but also prepared for the medical aspects of the race. I have sailed on 74-foot boats. I've sailed on our Cal 40 double-handed. And one thing I've learned is there's all kinds of people, all kinds of things that go on, but there are specific principles. And I think what I'm giving you today are the principles that will help you have a safe race across and have a fun race, because this is really a fun race. And as I was listening to my husband give a talk last week, he just kept saying it's a thing of beauty. And that's kind of how I feel about the Pacific Cup, too. And I've made so many friends. I look out on the audience, and I just have to pale and think about how nice we're all friends here after many years, since 1986. So I just start here because this is what I remember about being in the Pacific Cup, this absolutely gorgeous sight in the morning. A morning watch is one of my favorites, and I was with my dear friend who was 17 years old at the time, and we were up there, and all of a sudden I thought it was like a light behind us. What was it? And it was the sun rising, and this happened every morning, and it just took me away. And I know you'll see these beautiful sunrises as well. So let's talk about preparation, first of all. And preparation is really important, and it's to prevent injury and to prevent poor judgment. First of all, building strength and endurance and flexibility really helps you along this race. And building strength, especially in the upper extremities, we have a lot of strength in our lower extremities, but having a program where you build up your upper extremities just gives you an edge in the race, and it makes you feel better. What happens in races a lot, too, is that you wake up and you're tired and you kind of bang into this or you bang into that. Well, if you have more strength, you do less banging as well. I'd say for women, especially women over 35, that developing upper extremity strength is really important. And we have learned through studies that if you exercise and you have good endurance, you have less fatigue. That's a wonderful factor, because what I will be talking about, and I'm sure what some of the other people will be talking today about, is sleep and fatigue. If you become fatigued in this race, it's a real problem, but you can prevent fatigue. Another is habits. Habits may affect the quality of your trip. People don't smoke like they used to, but there used to be this great action that would happen before a race, and they'd say, I'm not going to smoke anymore, and they'd throw their cigarettes over the side, and here you had a raving maniac on your hands, a smoker who decided, I'm not going to smoke anymore. And that's a huge problem for everyone else on the boat, because there's no more cigarettes, and the guy's a nut or a woman. So what you have to do is, if you're a smoker, most people, smoking doesn't really happen on boats much anymore. You have to think about, how am I going to manage this? And so if you can change your habits about a month beforehand, so you're a month to 6 weeks, it's going to make your trip much nicer. So caffeine affects some people a lot. And if you're racing and you're rotating shifts, if you have coffee at one time during the day, it may affect your ability to get up for watches on other watches. So keep that in mind. If you are a strong caffeine drinker and you're dependent on caffeine to wake you up, you might want to change that as well. Alcohol can be another problem. And this is something that can be a little cunning and baffling. You really don't know. If someone drinks a lot and then you just get on a boat, and I would say most of the boats that I'm on now are boats that do not have alcohol, because they've found that it's much better to not have that as a factor, a distracting factor. Did someone make this mistake because they were drinking or not? You find that the boats are, I call them dry boats, a lot of dry boats. Maybe during the halfway party you have a glass of wine, but you just don't see it much. So if you drink a lot and you get on board and all of a sudden something happens, think about that before you go, maybe changing your alcohol patterns so you don't have a problem when you get on board. Offshore system of clothing. The last seminar was really good. Sally Richards talked about this, but I cannot tell you the importance of this. I've seen people get cold and go hypothermic. You think, oh, it's only 50 degrees out here, but there's a lot of wind, there's a lot of waves, and you get wet. So the system of clothing is, just to reiterate from the last seminar, you have your base level. You have your base layers, and you have the thermal underwear. Then you have your next layer is fleece top and fleece pants. And then your final level is ocean level foul weather gear. And I have seen this be a problem where people buy the light coastal foul weather gear. The weather is really tough out there, and they're cold and they're miserable, and they can't sail. So that means you've lost one person down on your crew, and then that person feels really bad, too. So there's the crew dynamics gets out of shape, and you have to redo everything. So if you go with this system of clothing, especially the first 3 or 4 days off the California coast, you're in great shape. I learned this, actually, I ocean raced for 2 or 3 years before I did the Pacific Cup. And during my experience ocean racing, I learned, and I saw people get dehydrated and also really cold. And if everybody was wearing this system of clothing, it didn't happen. So this is great. And boots that don't leak. Having warm feet is great, and a serious hat. And you can see down on the bottom, you can see the good hat and the foul weather gear. Now, you don't have to buy the most expensive foul weather gear, and I'm not here for brands, but you can buy a West Marine ocean-going foul weather gear, or you could buy the Henry Lloyd Musto foul weather gear, but as long as it's ocean level, the expedition level, that's what you're looking for. Be responsible for your safety gear. Boats that are organized just make so much sense because, first of all, you want to know where your personal flotation device is. You want to know that it fits properly, and you label it with your name because they all look the same. One boat I went on, they were all in the locker, and everybody just pulled something out. Now, that was horrible. And then, of course, one blew up in the locker, and that was it, and then you had to redo it. So be very careful about where you're responsible for your personal items. Also, I have down here, I show a picture on the right. I'm with Bob Nance, who is another winner of the Pacific Cup, and we were on watch. And when we are on watch, we keep our PFDs on. We are serious. We are the people responsible for the boat. So Bob and I were on watch, so you can see we were ready for anything, and we also have our gear on, even though it's a sunny day. I've just put another picture of a clip. One thing is, where are you going to clip that clip on? You clip in your boat. What we say is from sunset to sunrise, and in any heavy weather storm. But where is the best place? So you want to talk to your skipper about where is the best place to clip onto your boat. You want something that's stationary, that if you're going over the side, you're going to stay on. Of course, I think of the Safety at Sea seminars I've attended numerous times. And what is the main thing? Stay on the boat. Okay, so that's your main goal. Stay on the boat so you don't have to worry about it. Know how the emergency equipment is used. Many of us are not the navigators, and so you say, well, why do I have to know all the communication equipment? Sometimes something happens on these boats, and the navigator or this owner, who are usually the main people who know the communication, are responsible, and nobody else really knows. Well, I've learned on a boat, they'll say, Mary, you got to use a single sideband or something else. So I have learned everybody on board should know how to use a single sideband, how to turn that thing on, how to get somebody. Your sat phone. What we have on our sat phone is emergency numbers on the back. And I think we even include emergency number of a friend. So if you need to know who to contact, you have it there, the Coast Guard, and if something happens. So you're not looking for where the numbers are. So in our little waterproof box that has this sat phone, you'll find the emergency numbers. And then finally, how to work an EPIRB. And many people now have personal AIS beacons, and you need to know how to work these as well. Managing your personal gear. I already made a a comment about keeping things to knowing where they are. So first of all, when I saw a woman come on board one time with this little bag and she had all this stuff, it just worked out. So I usually have a bag that has my sunglasses, my croquis, everything that you need in one spot. So I always know right where it is. I'm not having to search through my bag. I know right where it is. The other thing, as Sally said last time, is to keep your clothes in a plastic bag because you don't want to have wet clothes. And anybody who knows what wet clothes are, it's horrible out there. But I also keep a set of nice, clean clothes, like this one. This is our crew shirt from, I don't know what year. But it was the best part about it. We keep that separate. So when you get off the boat, you look great in your fresh, clean clothes. So you keep a set of clean clothes. And finally, one thing I learned on Surprise, and from Susan, was that they have these wonderful little cubby racks, and we had shoe racks, hanging shoe racks. So all of the crew could stick their stuff in the shoe racks. And so let's say you come down and you just want to put your hat or whatever right in there. So they all had their own place, and there's their flashlight and whatever. So we had that for each crew, and that was so helpful. Sleep is a necessity. Sleep is a necessity because it decreases fatigue. So one of the things I always say is, how many hours do you need? Sleep is a weapon. Sleep is what keeps you going, because if you have fatigue, you can't think right anymore. And you have to think on a race like this. How many hours do you need? I found that for me, I need to have that 4-hour time. Some watch rotations are 3, 3, 3, 3. If I only have 3 hours, it doesn't work for me. I've been on, now our watch, on crewing on the Cal 40, we now have 3 on, 6 off. And it worked out. We figured it out. If you get sleep, you're going to have a happy crew. But I also like to crew when I was on the bigger boats, the Charlie, the Holland 67, I loved 6, 6, 4, 4, 4. 6 hours on, 6 hours off, 4, 4, 4 at night. So there are options, and that's when I want to say nothing's right. But if you know, and I know for me, I can't do the 3-hour watches because I won't get enough sleep and it won't work for me. What I really attribute to my husband too, Jim, is that after you're off your watch, your primary action is to get sleep and get that out of the way and then take care of other things. Because again, if you can't sleep, you lose your ability to do other things. So we have a routine on our boat where you sleep first and then you take care of your other activities. Charge your batteries. Take naps if all is quiet. And then finally, and use your earplugs, your blinders, whatever you need. Be rested at the finish line. I can't tell you the number of times going into Kaneohe, it's beautiful, but also going in at night. I seem to be the driver while they're running around the boat, and they're saying, here's the finish line here, here's this light here, here's the mountain light. You know, there are so many lights, and there's so much going on. If I didn't have full faculty, it would be a huge problem. So we start sleeping. We keep our watch rotations intact almost to the very end, because that way people are rested and they can make good decisions. And there are people in this room who have not been able to do that because of crew problems or this and that, but we're serious. Sometimes I wonder, why is that person sleeping? We're coming in. But they're sleeping because we need their faculties to get in properly. Personal items to maintain sanity, I say. We all have our own books, music, podcasts, because once you've slept and then you maybe have some time off, you just want to be by yourself because when you're on, you're on. E-readers, the last time when I double-handed with my husband, I got through Guns of August by an audio book, and that was great. I would never have been able to get through that book. Star and navigation apps. So there's all kinds of things to maintain your personal sanity, because after you sleep, you want to do something like that. Food preferences. We had some great talks about foods in the last seminar. I do want to say here that I have found that some people like special things. It's important to tell the provisioner and tell the captain what you like. Be real, because if you're bringing all this extra food and another person is provisioning, it's crazy. Just have the conversation. Now, one person on our boat really loves peanut butter and shaky peps on it, bagels in the morning, and that's fabulous. That's fine, but then when I showed this to my son, he said, "Mom, that's allergies. That could be allergies," and I'm so glad he said that. So when you're taking an inventory, I'm sure that will come up with some of our other panelists to make sure you know what the allergies are. As you know now, if you have kids, you can't even have nuts in a school anymore. You can't. Some people who smell peanut butter is enough to turn them over the edge. I sailed with a captain from Germany for years, and if he smelled peanut butter, he'd start screaming. So you have to know these things. Just have a conversation about provisioning. Personal and boat cleanliness. This is really important with a large crew or a small crew. The first 3 days, let me see if I missed something. No, I haven't got there yet. The first 3 days, most people are getting adjusted, and some people are going to be seasick, and some people are not going to be seasick, and they're in pretty good shape. But usually, everybody starts feeling, they're coming out of this feeling about 3 days, and that's when most people will then shower. And so it's pretty raw, pretty ripe, but it doesn't matter because you just can't do anything. But you know, then one thing I've also learned being on so many boats, many people shower in different ways. And now I'm perfectly fine. Some people use wipes in a bathroom, and actually they come out and the bathroom's cleaner than it was before. Some people use sun showers, and that's what I'm showing a picture of, a sun shower, where you fill it up with water, fresh water, and sometimes you use, if you're really sparing of water, you use salt water to dump on you, and then you rinse with a sun shower with fresh water, and it's been hanging out in the sun and it's nice and warm. And so then some people have that wonderful opportunity to shower in their boat with a water maker, and I've only had that once. Otherwise, it's been pretty Spartan. But this is just know how to do that. And then keeping up a really good system of staying clean. I think everybody does it, and it feels good. So set up a boat cleaning schedule. We start usually with setting up a boat cleaning schedule, but often some people choose to do the cleaning and other people do other things, and they take their roles. That's what I've learned mostly, too. As Steve said, for double-handers, if you are at the tiller for a long time, your rear end can get really rashy. And so one way is bringing hydrocortisone and baby powder. Another thing is hair conditioner. And it can be pretty bad. And so it's true. And seasickness. This is one thing. I've thought about this, that I put the first picture in the corner. Has anybody seen the movie Brooklyn? Did anybody see Brooklyn? Okay, a few people saw it. Well, this is about a woman who comes from Ireland and comes over to the United States for her first time, and then she does another trip. Then she goes back, and then she comes over. Well, the first trip, she's on the railing, and everything's nice, and then she goes down and realizes that nobody is eating but her in the cafeteria. And the waiter says, "Didn't anybody tell you? Didn't anybody tell you you're going to get sick?" And so she's just a mess, and she's throwing up all over. And then on her second trip over, it's really wonderful because she's sitting next to somebody else on the boat, another woman, and she says, "Don't eat for 3 days." And she's now the veteran, and she's telling the person, the expert, the mentor. And it's so true. I love that because I thought that's what it's like. When you get out there, you have to adjust. Your body has to adjust. Anybody can get seasick. Even if you never think you can get seasick, you can get seasick. But the point is that it lasts for about 2 or 3 days, and then you start feeling better again. If you don't feel better again, then you will need some hydration, and people have to watch you. And I've had people, I was sharing a bunk on a Santa Cruz 50 one time with a fellow who got so sick, all he could do was go from the bunk, throw up, and go back in. And that was my bunk. I was supposed to hot bunk with this guy. So, of course, what I did is I told my husband to get out of his bunk, and I took his bunk. But So this does happen, and after about 3 or 4 days, he was fine, but it was a rough 3 or 4 days, and if I hadn't witnessed it, I wouldn't have believed it, and it was that bad. So what do I tell people? The remedies is whatever you do, try whatever you want to beforehand to see how it affects you and know how you feel. And what we do, so I've tried scopolamine patches. For me, it doesn't work. It may for you. I'm too small for them. You can't cut them in half. I was doing the bow on a boat going to the Farallones. I went up, the boat went down, and I felt like I was still up. That's not the right one for me. It was very scary. And so they have bonine, Dramamine. For me, meclizine works. For most of our crew, meclizine seems to work. We start the drugs 24 to 48 hours beforehand. You get over some of the side effects. Now, remember, a lot of this was all tested out for me because I did a lot of ocean racing. Ocean racing to the Farallones, ocean racing to Point Reyes, ocean racing to Half Moon Bay. So if you can do some ocean races and find out which one's the best for you, do it. Because then it'll make those first 3 days really, really easier. And eat lightly. Doesn't mean you don't have to eat anything, but we just eat lightly. And on the website of the Pacific Cup, there's some really great ideas for days 1 through 3. Sun protection is really important, and we all know that. Bring lots of sunscreen, but I think, what was it called? The Skin Foundation. I've worked for nonprofits, and believe me, they really mean business because they're there because somebody had problems. And their recommendation also is UVA, UVB sunscreen with zinc and titanium. At least 30 SPF. Don't forget chapstick with an SPF with a sunscreen in it. So what we do, and I think it works, is we have more shoe racks on the other side, and we just put on lots of new sunscreen. So with at least a 30 SPF with UVA, UVB, and you can find it right in the drugstore. The most important thing is to stay covered. Wear hats, wear sunglasses, wear long sleeve shirts. I do like those blockout UV long sleeve shirts. It does make a difference. It really does block it out. If you're sensitive to the sun, really look into those. And almost everybody's selling them these days. That was my son when he was 13 on our first trip to Hawaii with him, and he had a great time. But it just makes sense to keep covered, and you put the sunscreen on every time you go out on your watch. Dehydration can sneak up on you, where you can't think straight, you have headaches, constipation, and seasickness. So you just wonder, why do I feel this way? And one of the reasons you get the dehydration is because you're out there and a lot of fluid is evaporating off your body. You don't even know it. You're just kind of feeling the wind and you're feeling the sun, and you just have to keep drinking. Now, we just go with the small pint bottles that you buy in the store, the cases, and several cases of them. But if you go with the bigger gallons, then you can just put them in smaller of your own canisters. One thing I will say about this, the water in boats, I mean, you have to keep drinking and just do it, is I've seen a couple cases, in one time in the '89 Transpac, where this fellow was responsible for the water tanks on our boat, and he didn't know it, but he emptied a tank. So that's why we strongly believe that you should have bottles, water in containers. You know, the gallon containers, the pint containers, however you want. And the other time, as I know, is that somebody thought that the size of their water tank was a certain size and it was smaller than it was. So if you know how much water you personally brought on and it's in these containers, then you're going to be okay. Do you remember caffeinated beverages and alcohol is diuretics, so that causes dehydration. Now, this is not my day on first aid kits. We have the expert of experts, but I can tell you just a couple things. That we usually keep 2 first aid kits on a larger boat. If it was just my husband and I on the last boat, it doesn't matter. But I like to have a little container where you have commonly used items that anyone can get into. That's very nice, and everybody would need a little mild pain medicine, and we can get some recommendations over here. It's usually ibuprofen, like Advil, or aspirin, Band-Aids, whatever, and some ointments. Because that's basically what people have. They hurt their finger, they just get a headache. And some people do get headaches when you're changing rotations. It just happens. So this is what I like, is to have a smaller place where people can get into, and the large first aid kit for the real deal if something really happens. Please tell the skipper about any medical conditions. These are conditions that usually require medication, that if the person doesn't go on the medication, there could be some dire consequences that you're not used to. Diabetes, seizures, some people have to have seizure prevention, heart condition. We have sailed with people who have pacemakers, and they check their batteries before they go see their cardiologist, and everything's fine. So you don't have to worry. Any disease that requires regular medication. The other one I was thinking of was anticoagulants. A lot of people are on anticoagulants and aspirin, which is also an anticoagulant for prevention. I'm looking forward to hearing the other talks today because the one thing that came up besides having, people kind of get hit a little bit on the head or just getting banged around in the boat was somebody came on the boat and he was very tired, and he had been working really hard, and all of a sudden he got sick, and he was his lungs were sounding terrible. And I read that book, First Aid at Sea. I had read that book before I left, and sitting on a stationary bicycle, so I was getting two things going at the same time, endurance and reading, and learned about antibiotics. And we brought the antibiotics, and by giving him the antibiotics, he pulled out in 2 days. And he couldn't get out of his bed. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? So if you're prepared just for that kind of thing, that's the only thing that I've had that has been, that I've had to worry about. So I just want to summarize today is that to have a pre-race conditioning program, wear the proper sailing clothes and gear, and we went over that, the different clothes. And, as you get into the tropics more, you still want to be covered, and then you end up in shorts. You just can't help yourself. Sleep is a weapon. Sleep and fatigue can just ruin. Fatigue can ruin your trip. So you have to be very careful about that. Stay hydrated and stay sun protected. Now, I mostly have fun and celebrate at halfway party, and just enjoy the beautiful Pacific Ocean. Thanks.